Hello, I'm Jana Sherwiński and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. The security conference is underway in Riga, the capital of Latvia, with many crucial issues on the agenda, including migration and also the war in Ukraine. So what developments are likely to be the subject of discussions, and can these discussions actually inform future choices which could prove pivotal to the solution for these problems? Well, we're going to talk about this and more with our guest today, Marcin Zaborowski, Policy Director at GLOBSEC, Future of Security Program. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon or good morning, I'm not sure. I'm speaking from Riga. There is 1 hour difference here.
So let us begin with the question of migration. This has been a very hotly debated issue recently, but this has culminated with the European Union firmly backing Poland's approach, with Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk presenting his view on what Poland needs to do to avert the threat of, as he called it, instrumentalized migration by the regime in Belarus. So do you think that this is the end of the matter, that essentially the European Union is now going to adopt widespread measures which other countries may also benefit from insofar as countering such hybrid warfare tactics is concerned?
Yes, I think that the EU is hardening its stance on migration and on the issue of asylum, being aware of the failure of the European Union in 2015 to stop the flow of migration, which led to the boost of unpopularity of the populist parties, which are threatening European integration. So there's a number of political, economic, and social reasons why the EU has to have a much firmer position on migration. And Poland, as well as other countries which are securing the external border of the EU, are at the forefront of that, of these decisions and of these measures which need to be taken. Because if anybody enters the territory of Poland, that person can rather easily get throughout the entire EU and relocate wherever that person wishes to. So we are really at the absolute forefront.
So it's a question of Schengen zone security. Do you think that this change of stance among European Union leaders within mainstream political parties can also make it more difficult for far-right populists to advance their own goals? Because arguably it was them who started this debate a long time ago, the debate on migration in a general sense. However, they were doing so from a totally different perspective, not from the perspective of security threats posed by hybrid warfare operations. But this was mostly due to the fact that they generally have a certain approach to migrants, a certain dislike. Do you think that we're moving on now to a more comprehensive, pragmatic, but also a non-racist debate on the issue of migration in general, and that this may actually make it more difficult for the far right to obtain more support within European societies?
Absolutely. I mean, I already recalled the situation in 2015. So what happened in 2015? The EU was swamped by the migration crisis. The migrants arrived to Italy and Greece, to the southern shores of the EU, and instead of being processed there and turned back or kept ashore at these countries, the border guards of Greece and Italy was quite willingly sending the migrants up north, which is where they wanted to go, meaning predominantly to Germany and to Scandinavian states, where the social security provisions are simply more generous than in Germany, than in Greece or Italy. Then, on the top of everything, when these people were already moving up north, the German Chancellor Angela Merkle said, we can do it. We can deal with the situation. We can accept all these migrants. And of course, when she only said that, then a trickle of migrants has turned into a wave. And it became almost unstoppable. So throughout that summer of 2015, over a million, about 1,300,000 migrants arrived and and moved to Germany and Scandinavian states and some other countries, which with the more generous social welfare provisions. And that led to the boost in popularity of the far right parties, which were opposing migration outright, as you just said in your prompt. So, for example, in Germany, the Alternative for Germany doubled up in its popularity. In Austria, the Freedom Party became a party of government. And throughout Central and Eastern Europe, we saw the same thing. For example, popularity of Viktor Orban was very much boosted by his hard stance on migration.
Orban, I mean, is a very specific case also because at the same time he was facilitating the question of movement of citizens of the Russian Federation into Hungary. So again, this is not entirely consistent with his own rhetoric. But let's move on now to the question of the war in Ukraine. President Zelensky has been criticized for suggesting that if Ukraine is not admitted into NATO, then it might actually be forced to seek alternative measures in order to provide credible deterrence. And he specifically alluded to nuclear weapons. Do you think this criticism is well-founded?
Well, I mean, from the Ukrainian point of view, and I'm saying it because I'm here in Riga at Riga conference where you have lots of Ukrainian military people. So their perspective is that they either have been betrayed by the West or they have not been shown the support that they believe should be given to them. The country is at war for 2.5 years. That it's constantly being bombed. People cannot go back to normal lives, and the whole support that is coming from the EU is all the time given with some kind of a caveat. So no long-range missiles because the Russians would perceive it as escalation. No shooting up of Russian missiles coming to the territory of Poland, Romania. You mentioned your prompt also Romania, because again, the Russians would see it as escalations. And the Ukrainians are disappointed and are saying, well, we cannot really count on the full support of the West. Then indeed we have to secure ourselves in whatever way we can. And definitely nuclear option is one of these options which is being debated by Ukrainian military and politicians.
Of course, one might think of it as taboo, but this, in fact, has the advantage, so to say, of not being the first time that Ukraine would have actually been handling these weapons, so to say. They used to have them. It was Western countries that provided or were to provide assurances to Ukraine in exchange for getting rid of these weapons, right? So do you think that Ukrainians really do have a reason for a certain resentment that, the West told us, okay, give up your nuclear weapons, we will provide security, and later on they didn't receive the degree of support that they were perhaps counting on?
So you are referring here to 1994.
The Budapest Memorandum.
When Ukraine signed the so-called Budapest Memorandum, and in this memorandum, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons, which it had on its territory as a legacy of the Soviet Union, in exchange for guarantees of territorial integrity. And Russia was one of the countries which signed up to that memorandum, in addition to the United States, France, and Great Britain. And obviously, that memorandum is constantly being broken by the terms of this memorandum are constantly being broken by the Russians. This is clear signal not only to Ukrainians but to the entire world. If you have nuclear weapons, don't give them up, because if you do, then you can be invaded, just like the way Ukraine has been invaded by Russia. If Ukraine had these nuclear weapons, then Ukrainians believe that Russia would not have invaded it.
So non-proliferation makes sense to the extent that it is backed up by powerful and robust security guarantees from the international community. If these guarantees do not exist, well, we're in a totally different situation. Coming back to Ukraine's position right now, there was some criticism of the victory plan presented by President Zelensky. Hungarian leader Viktor Orban, for example, said that this plan is, and I quote, more than frightening. What do you think Viktor Orban is really afraid of?
Well, I think Viktor Orban is clearly in the Russian corner. He now plays with the Russians. For him, some kind of a compromise means that the Ukrainians are giving up on their territory and are committing themselves to never joining NATO. That is something which the Russians want, and this is what Viktor Orban wants. And what the Ukrainians have outlined now is that they are not going to give up their territory, and that they will be defending their territory, and that they will be joining Western institutions. So clearly, this is a robust commitment here to staying the course. We also have heard it here from Ukrainian politicians and military people here in Riga. And the Ukrainian victory plan has got the full support of all the Baltic states.
This is an outlier.
Well,
I mean, Orban is an outlier. But one quick question. There is still skepticism as to NATO membership for Ukraine. Why is that so? Why do you think we're still not seeing a more, shall we say, well, decisive approach in this regard?
Mostly because of the current American administration, which has been skeptical about extending hard security guarantees to country at war, because according to the way the Americans see Article 5 of NATO Treaty, is that they would need to get engaged in actually fighting the Russians now on the territory of Ukraine if Ukraine was in NATO. So the current U.S. administration and probably the future administrations have no appetite for doing that, and hence the resistance.
And if Trump wins elections, this could be even more problematic, but that is a matter to be discussed perhaps at a different time. So for the time being, that's all on this subject. Marcin Zaborowski was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'm Jonasz Rewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us for more latest news and updates.